Welcome back to Direct Edition, a podcast about nothing and everything. I'm your host, Dave. Hello, everybody. It's Tuesday, April 22nd, 2 days after 420, and I haven't gotten high. Guess I'm just getting too old for that shit. To quote Danny Glover, maybe I am, maybe I'm not, maybe I just need a clear head. Good morning. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm saying good morning. Big thanks to everybody that tuned into the episode about my experience working as a mailman during COVID. And also big thanks to Dinesh Shamdasani from Bad Idea for sitting down with me for that great lengthy interview. I hope you enjoyed that. And I hope you're excited to pick up Planet Death. I've read the Ashcan and it's awesome. The art's awesome. It's good setup. Like, you can't really ask for much more on a preview comic. But what I'm really excited about is Wayshak's Cul-de-sac, which as of today, Bad Idea posted his cover for Cul-de-sac. So it's out there, it's coming, and it's going to be great. But I found Dinesh to be interesting on so many levels. And he's a friendly guy, but he's actually passionate about what he does and the medium of comics. And I think at face value, if you're just kind of looking at it in a cynical way, which is what I do, generally when it comes to people who come in with big marketing and kind of that kind of mentality, maybe you think that he's just a gimmick person that wants to get noticed, but he really does understand that to promote something, you actually have to stand out. And this third wave of Bad Idea comics that is coming, I'm really excited to see how it unfolds and how it's received by the greater comics community as well as comic stores. And I think it's going to surprise some people. Also, just talking about original art and movies and stuff like that, it's always going to be a good time talking about those subjects. Speaking of talking about movies, this past Friday, I went to go see the brand new movie Sinners. You're going to see this almost 2 weeks after it came out, but it's the new movie written and directed by Ryan Coogler, starring Michael B. Jordan, as well as a couple others like Delroy Lindo, Haley Steinfeld, etc. But this is their fifth time working together, and it's Coogler's fifth movie he did: Fruitvale Station, Creed, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, and now Sinners. Creed 2 was not directed by Coogler, but he was involved in crafting the story as well as Michael B. Jordan starring. But this was their fifth movie together, and it was a sublime experience. I can not just recommend you going to see it, but try and find the best theater to see it at. And the way the formats and everything that it was released in, I watched this 10-minute video on YouTube sponsored by Kodak, and it's Ryan Coogler basically talking to you, the viewer, about the different methods used to film in general and how he filmed everything and all of the formats that they're releasing it in. And that really sold me on wanting to go see it in IMAX. I was thinking about it slightly, but the Seattle IMAX, the Pacific Science Center, it takes me like 45 minutes, maybe 50 minutes to get there, depending on traffic. It costs money to park. It's just a pain in the ass, but it is my favorite movie theater on the West Coast here. And I've always been, you can call me a cinephile, whatever. I'll take that label. I've always kind of been like that, trying to see the movies in the best formats that I can. And it's been like that for at least 20 years, because I remember when Batman Begins came out, it was showing at the IMAX at Lincoln Center in New York City. And we got tickets to the midnight show, me and my two roommates, and maybe it was one other friend. And, we went into New York City from Long Island, and we got home at like 3:30 in the morning and all that. But since those early days of seeking out the best IMAX in New York, I would always try and find the best places to see movies wherever I lived or wherever I was traveling. So Sinners is an absolute blast of a movie. I won't go into any spoilers, but what you think it's about, you don't, unless you've looked at spoilers. Yes, it's a horror movie, but the themes running through it, the plot, the way everything unravels, and the way that Coogler presents things is unlike anything I've ever really seen. And it's interesting because the one thing I will compare it to is a comic book that he is still trying to get made into a movie, and that is Bitterroot, which is Sanford Green's book. And I had Sanford on the program a couple weeks ago. And if you like Bitterroot, you'll love Sinners. If you love Sinners, you'll love Bitterroot. So I'm, once again, no spoilers. I just tell you, it's not just a horror movie. It's very much about culture. It's about music. It's about owning culture, Black culture specifically. But there's so much more to it. I'm going to see it again tomorrow with my buddy John, because once ain't enough for a movie like that. And since I generally talk about something that I like or something that I've consumed recently at the beginning of these podcasts, I just want to give, like two notable recommendations for a comic book and for an album. I just finally got a chance to sit down and read the first issue of DC's Absolute Martian Manhunter by Dennis Camp, and I forget who the rest of the creative team is. This book's unlike anything that I think I've seen, at least in modern comics. It's extremely psychedelic. It's extremely not something that you would think you would see in a DC comic book. If you're not a fan of comics and you're a fan of psychedelic art, or you like just weird, trippy stuff, you'll really dig this comic. If you're a fan of comics with an open mind, you'll absolutely dig this comic book. And it's a couple weeks old, but wasn't able to get my hands on a copy. And then I finally did. I read it this morning and I really loved it. I'm not done with Severance. I just started watching Severance for the first time. I'm almost done with this most recent season. I'm enjoying the hell out of that. But to complete the trifecta is talking about an album that I really love. And I think I've mentioned this band on the program. I know I did. Deep Sea Divers' new album, Billboard Heart. Absolutely fantastic. Great energy on that album. Great songwriting. Jessica Dobson's a hell of a vocalist and a hell of a guitarist. So you can find that wherever you get this podcast. You most likely be able to stream the album on that same platform, unless you're listening to this podcast on an AM radio that you somehow rigged up to the internet to only play this podcast. That's a great idea. If somebody wants to do that, please send me one of those. I do have something fun to talk about today, or something interesting, a little bit of my more history of Dave. But before I do that, I do want to make sure that everybody knows that any participation from you, the listener, in the way of a like, a review, a comment on Instagram, a comment on YouTube, all that stuff really helps. So please help me get this podcast out to more people, get more recognized, maybe hire like a big time producer or something like that. And next thing you know I'll be interviewing Godzilla. If you've been following along of my podcast history since the beginning, I did a podcast called It Came From the Newsstand. It didn't last too long. It was 20 episodes or something like that. That was more focused on collecting, collectibles, selling, the community, all that, which is great. But it doesn't, to talk about that aspect of everything, doesn't hold my interest long term, because I live it. So it holds my interest in the way of like, yeah, I love buying my comics. I love buying collections. I love selling, all that. But to talk about it nonstop would be exhausting. But my, like a lot of people in this hobby, or in a hobby in general, if you collect records or you collect toys or whatever you collect, if you're a collector, your tastes change, or the things that you collect change throughout time. That's what makes you a human being, and, what keeps you. I mean, I only can speak for myself, but it's what keeps me interested in whatever I'm interested in, is because I know at any moment I might discover something that I'm like, oh, I want to try and track these down. It's kind of like how I travel. I went to Scotland 4 times, and I kept finding things that I wanted to explore there. And then I went to Japan this last year, and now I'm excited to go back to Japan this year and explore more. I like to really dive into something. And that's really, I think, the reason why anybody would enjoy listening to this podcast, is because I'm not just talking about the same thing over and over. I don't dislike ideas or podcasts like that. It's just not for me. But I started, my first love of collecting would be toys and comics when I was a kid. But as I went into my teens, probably around 14, I started to get really interested in hockey. The sport, watching it, it started with, it didn't start with, but I think it was strengthened by Genesis, NHL 92, 93, 94, 95, probably 93, 94, 95. It was that Chicago Blackhawks team, which is legend, thing of legend. You've got Jeremy Roenick, Steve Larmer, Michel Goulet, Chris Chelios, Steve Smith, and Ed Belfour in goal. I grew up on Long Island, and so I'm a Islander fan by birth. Islanders, Mets, Jets, and the enemy was Yankees, Rangers, Giants, the ones that always won championships. And so but the cool thing was, and I think I've talked about this a bit. My dad grew up in Brooklyn, and he would, he told me he would cut school to go to Ebbets Field. Not Ebbets Field. Ebbets Field. He would cut school to go to Ebbets Field, and he said he would get some Dodger autographs, but he wanted to see the game. So when I was younger, and my brother, we would get taken to Islander games and sometimes Devil games, and we'd stay. My parents would allow us to hang out after and try and get autographs. So as I grew into loving hockey with some friends of mine in middle school and then high school, I started exploring the possibility of collecting hockey autographs at Nassau Coliseum. Now, I know I've talked about this aspect, but I'm going to talk about something that's even deeper. There's an aspect of all. Look, I can't generally speak for you, the listener, but I think as a human being, as kids, as young adults, teens, whatever, we all do stuff that would be regarded as moronic or stupid or idiotic, that we wouldn't do as adults. And if you are doing these types of things as an adult, you should probably reflect on that. I can say that I never landed in jail. I never got arrested. I managed to escape that. Could be the combination of my skin color and also the fact that I'm pretty charming. Let's face that fact. But I have done some stuff that I, in hindsight, regret. And what I'm going to talk about today, I would not recommend anybody else do. I'm not happy that I shouldn't say that. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it now. It's not a reflection of who I am. Certain things. Now, some of this is totally a reflection of who I am. And so let's start with the Madison Square Garden, because growing up on Long Island, we have access to 3 hockey teams, 3 baseball teams, 2 football, 2 basketball, 2 baseball, etc. You got, for hockey, you got the Devils, the Islanders, Rangers. I started collecting autographs in around 95. I had an older friend named Derek, who, not the sharpest knife in the cutlery drawer, but he wasn't a bad dude completely. And he wasn't a stupid dude completely. He's kind of street smart. But anyway, he was older. He was bigger. He was 6'3", 4", big chest. He looked like he could have been an athlete. And so Derek used to test that. He used to test that real well. And what he would do is he tried once or twice of walking into Nassau Coliseum as if he was on the opposing team playing that day. So the way that the NHL used to work, I haven't collected hockey autographs in 15, 20 years, maybe even more. But it used to work like this. Morning skate, it would be 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. The opposing team has the ice. And so on Long Island, you had the Long Island Marriott here and the Nassau Coliseum here, and they just walk across the parking lot and go in. So one day, Derek just comes out of the hotel, even though he wasn't staying there, in a suit. A bunch of us go up to him, pretend to get his autograph, and he walks in to Nassau Coliseum. And I think what his objective was is just to chill there and, get autographs and whatnot. And it worked. It worked. And it worked multiple times. Every once in a while, I'd befriend a player. Player would bring me into the skate. I'd be in there with a pass and all that stuff. But Derek wanted to try something else. And he's like, yo, and he had this really baritone voice. Yo, let's go into New York for the Edmonton Oilers. Yo, and I'm going to try and get us into the skate. I was like, dude, whatever. I'll cut school. I'll go with you. He had a car. I didn't have to worry. My parents were weird. My parents are weird, but no, they let me go a lot or a bunch. And then sometimes I just straight up fucking cut school. Once again, kids, stay in school until you get out of high school and do whatever the fuck you want. So we go into New York City. I don't remember what year this is. I'll guess somewhere around 98, 99, somewhere like that. And he's got his suit on. And the way that this is pre 9/11, so the way that Madison Square Garden was, you can just like walk up to the players' entrance around the side. I guess that was on 35th Street. No, it was going down, so it's probably 33rd. And he walks in, and I had gone into Madison Square Garden a bunch of times in a different way, and I'll tell you about that shortly. But long short of it, it worked. The guy working the gate, it's like, and then Derek's like, oh, I left my wallet back at the hotel, and the guy was like so understanding, and he's like, oh, this is my little brother, he's in town visiting. And I'm pretty sure it was the Edmonton Oilers. So we got into the skate and we sat right where the players come off the ice and got a bunch of autographs. I might have even gotten a game used stick that day, and it worked. It fucking worked. Subsequently, we did that 2 more times. And like the second time, the third time, the guy who worked, I can't remember his name. I remember kind of what he looks like, older gentleman that worked at the thing. I guess he thought Derek was media, and every time we tried it for like a year to a year and a half, he didn't even say anything. He just wrote us passes and went in. And Derek did it a bunch of times when I wasn't there. We went a bunch of times. I think he went 1 or 2 times with our friend Kenny, and it worked. And it worked up until a point where we got in once for the Penguins. And it was when Mario Lemieux was back on the team. I think it was after he'd beaten cancer. And Lemieux saw us and saw us getting autographs. And I think that's when he was GM. I pretty sure that's when he was GM too. And he had us booted out of Madison Square Garden. And we never tried after that, because once you get the boot, it's like they know who you are. What was interesting is one day we were doing that. I can't remember what team it was for. And this is for the hockey nerds, but also for the sports nerds. The Rangers had actually were skating at the Garden, which they rarely do because they had their own practice facility. And we had passes, and they were coming off the ice, and we were in the locker room area, or like where you walk into the locker room, and Messier was coming off the ice, Mark Messier, and your boy got a photo with Messier in his practice uniform, which, look at that, 260, 70 pound Dave. Doesn't look like that anymore. That was one of those days where I was like, all right, that was pretty fucking cool. But before we were able to trick Madison Square Garden security into letting us in legally, we developed this technique, and I can't remember who it was. It might have been Derek. It might have been one of our other friends that told us that there was a way to sneak into Madison Square Garden and make your way down to the ice for the skate. Now, the thing is you sneak in there. You're scared shitless because it's New York City. It's the most famous arena in the world. And at any moment, they could catch you and basically say you're trespassing. And we never did this in a post 9/11 world, because after that, everything changed literally and physically at the Garden, everything changed. They had police there all the time and all that. But in the old days, and if you've been to Madison Square Garden, especially like after before the renovation, you'll be able to picture this. If I can find pictures, I will accompany them with this story. But you walk into the main box office, and if you're looking at the ticket windows, you look to the left, and there is at the time, it was a Fleet Bank ATM, which eventually became a Bank of America ATM, and then Chase. I know my bank history in New York. And so if you walk to the left like you're going to use the ATM, and would be like the middle of the day, so the box office would have like maybe one open window, maybe not. Or it would be in the morning. And right next to that ATM, maybe like 6 feet away to the left, is a little security office. So, I mean, it's like, okay. And then you would walk, if you were going to a game, you would walk past all that and go up to the escalators. So what we used to do is we used to pretend to go to use the ATM, kind of peek around and see if anybody's in the security office. Typically, there wasn't. They were probably patrolling or walking around. Once again, earlier in the day, pre 9/11, people just doing their regular, normal jobs. And as soon as we saw that there was nobody in there, we just quickly ran walk. You don't run because you don't want to make too much noise. You run walk, maybe 100 feet, 150 feet, and there's an elevator. You get into the elevator. And what we used to do, I think we used to go up to floor 6 or 7. And that would bring you not all the way to the top, but to the top of the seats before you get to the luxury box floor. And what we used to do is we used to see, okay, get up there, plant our ass in the last row of the seats. You can't see shit. The lights aren't on. You can see, but I'm saying if somebody's on the ice, they'd really have a hard time seeing that there were people up there. Sometimes you'd see cleaning crews around the seats prepping for the day. Sometimes not. And we'd wait until we see kind of practice winding down, walk down, and get autographs as they were coming off the ice. Most players are like, what the hell? They were confused, but they weren't mean. And it wasn't until the Mario Lemieux thing that we got kicked out. But we used to do that all the time at Madison Square Garden. One time we actually hid, or just kind of stowed ourselves away and moved around enough and stayed until the game started. I can't remember what game it was. And then, we just walked around the whole time, because if we sat somewhere, we were inevitably going to get kicked out. But we spent the whole day in Madison Square Garden. It was hilarious. So that's something that I used to do. Yeah. With Nassau Coliseum, we used to do even weirder shit. This is in the old days, they're back, not emergency exit, but one of their exits for the convention center that was below the Nassau Coliseum, in the basement. You could access those doors, and we would sometimes test them to see if any of them were unlocked. And every once in a while, we get lucky, and one of them would be unlocked, and we'd sneak in. They got real smart to us, but there was a door. There was a door around the back of the Coliseum that I guess maybe the locks didn't work or something, so they chained them. And they chained them. They were the push bar doors. So 2 push bar doors, and they chained the 2 push bars together. But if you pulled it open and you were small enough, you could fit right in the gap. And I think it was this kid Chuck Munzer. He was he was a small kid. He wasn't tall, he wasn't fat. He was just kind of short, but small. And he used to be able to get in. And then he would find a door and open it for all of us. We were just wreaking havoc on that place. It was a war. It was a war between us, the autograph collectors, the Nassau Coliseum, and the Long Island Marriott. The Long Island Marriott fucking hated us. Oof. And if you listen to all these podcast episodes, the Long Island Marriott was the location for the Big Show, the wrestler, that story where he knocked out some dude. I have a lot of ties to this place because I misspent my youth at that, going to hockey games, going to wrestling games, collecting autographs, 7 years straight doing all this stuff at the Nassau Coliseum. And then we only were able to sneak into the Continental Airlines Arena back. It might have even been called the Brendan Byrne Arena back then. It might have been Continental. We snuck in there a couple times because if you'd ever been to that to go see a Devils game, it's kind of like a hexagonal arena. So there's these like banks of 50 doors, and then there's 6 sides of them, I think, or 5. Can't remember. But the cleaning crews were there during the day, and every once in a while they would just leave the doors open, and we'd walk right in and never got kicked out of that arena during the morning skate. Now, obviously, like this was kind of like an era. The mid 90s to the early 2000s was this era of discovery for a lot of people. The internet really didn't have any community of autographs on there. There was no social media. So like nobody had really much to share. There wasn't a way to share this information. And I'm not doing this to be egotistical, but I was part of this crew that definitely started a huge piece of the autograph craze, but also the game used equipment craze. Now, for those who are not into sports memorabilia or any of that shit, which I don't care about sports anymore, but this is my life and I lived it. For baseball or for hockey, really, like if you're a collector, and we could put it into terms of comics, like instead of collecting comics, you're going for original art. That's like the next level. For hockey and baseball, it's to get a game used stick or bat. Basketball's tough. There's nothing, sneakers are they're not given out a lot. Football, there's really no equipment that they're going to give out. Like you rarely see players giving out game used helmets and jerseys and stuff like that. But hockey, sticks there's tons of them because, players can go through multiple sticks in a game. Same with bats. They can go through bats a lot. And this is what I'm talking about, this era, is before teams started to sell the game use equipment in auctions or in raffles or in the team store. It's not a stretch for me to say that me and my friends caused that to happen because teams saw what they weren't making money on. And just like every big business or business in general, if you have a way to make money that somebody else is doing and you're not doing it, you're going to do it, especially if it's coming from your product. But I started collecting game used sticks like when I was 14 or 15. I was kind of taught this by Derek and Chuck and Chris, my friends that I kind of made when I first started doing this, like try and put together a binder or a small book of cards of the player, give it to them and ask them for a stick, because most players don't get comps of their cards. And a lot of the players would always say the same thing to me. It was almost like I knew what I was doing. I can't wait to give these to my mom, or I can't wait to give these to my dad, my parents, my kid, my whatever, because they don't get their own cards. And I was a collector, so I would rip boxes and just accumulate tons of cards of all different players. So I started doing that. And for those of you that are super hockey nerds or just hockey nerds in general, this was in the late 90s, early 2000s. So none of the players that are playing now I have ever met except for Crosby and Ovechkin. But I had sticks from Hall of Famers Martin Brodeur, Joe Sakic, Steve Yzerman, Sergei Fedorov. I had a Messier stick, Jeremy Roenick, Keith Tkachuk, Theo Fleury, Ed Belfour, Dominic Hasek, everybody. Pat LaFontaine. That's not what this is about. This is about the stupid thing that I used to do. So I had all of these sticks. I mean, at one point when I was still living with my parents, I didn't move out until I was in my early 20s. And then when I moved out, I still had all this stuff. I sold it eventually because I wanted to move, but that's neither here nor there. I have pictures that you'll see as I'm talking about this. The basement was lined up with sticks. It looked like a locker room. And I started collecting even more and deeper into game used jerseys, gloves, helmets, skates, all that stuff. I was referred to as the stick god because there would be a team that's coming from out of town, and Dave would get at least one stick from that team, maybe two, at a game. I wasn't greedy. I never tried to get the same stick over and over and over. But what I was smart. And so I amassed this huge collection of sticks. And I started to reach out to teams and try and buy stuff directly from them. I'd email trainers. I would, just try and get sticks any way, shape, or form, because I could see how this trend that had started was becoming huge, and all this stuff was worth a lot of money. I mean, I could say probably from getting all this hockey equipment, game used stuff. I mean, if I kept it till now, I'd have probably $150,000 to $200,000 collection or something crazy like that. But when I cashed out, I made some good money. But I don't remember how it happened. I think it was when I called. Actually, I do. I called the Edmonton Oilers to see if they sold any of their game used equipment, because I had heard that they do. And they're like, oh, we don't as a team, but there is this store. I forget the name of it. Something Outfitters, maybe. They get all of our stuff. We kind of send it to them. And I think it was like a donation. I don't remember. But they sold their game used equipment. So I started going online. I think at the time, it was late 90s. Maybe they had a website. Maybe they had a catalog or something, like a newsletter. And I started to buy, it was like no big players at the time or anything, but I bought some goalie equipment. I bought some of this. And then I found out that this place would also get the model sticks that the companies would make for certain players. So for instance, let's take Dominic Hasek. Gold medal, Stanley Cup winning goaltender, one of the greatest goalies of all time. Played for the Buffalo Sabres for most of his career. He played for the Blackhawks too. I feel like I'm missing one team as well. Oh, the Red Wings. And they sold his exact model stick. So Coho, I think it was a Coho stick. Coho would make this goalie stick to the specifications that he wanted. It would have his name stamped on it, and they would sell these model sticks in the store, and you could buy it for whatever, $75, and you could use that stick if you were a goalie. And so at that same time, I was selling some sticks on eBay, probably just some stuff I didn't want anymore, or doubles that I had or whatever. And I sold one, and then I get a message, and I don't remember how it unfolded, but Be a Player, Upper Deck, Be a Player was a card set that was the first set to feature every pack having an autograph. And then what they would do is they would do these, which is a common practice now, but they would do game used memorabilia cards where they would take a jersey, cut it up into swatches, put the piece of that jersey on the card, number it, whatever player it was from. A real bad practice that I didn't like, because you're taking a piece of hockey history and you're cutting it up. You're destroying it forever just to make money on a card in a pack, exploiting collectors, all that stuff. It's the same reason why I don't like the thing that the comic space has, the comic cuts. Even though there's an unlimited amount of certain comics or a huge amount of comics, I still don't like people cutting comics up that are of huge importance. No, that's not what it's meant for. It's not meant to be it's meant to be viewed as a piece of art, not these little cutouts. And then when you're taking game used equipment, jerseys that Gretzky wore, whatever, I don't like that. And they bought a stick for me, and they contacted me, and I can't remember his name, but he's like, yeah, I'm just looking to buy more sticks if you have anything that we can use for cards. And I'm like, And I think I might have taken something it was a broken stick that I had gotten from somebody, and they offered me some stupid amount. It was like $150 stick. Maybe it was worth $150, and they paid me $300. And I'm like, well, I don't really like this company. I don't really like what they're doing. Okay. So now remember, just getting once again give this warning of don't do this. Actually, you can exploit whatever company you want to. Any corporation you can exploit. But this is not who I am anymore. So this is not a reflection of how I do business in any way, shape, or form these days. I was a little 18-year-old shit, or however old I was, 19 years old. Anyway, let's go back to the Edmonton place that sells the model sticks. Bought a Dominic Hasek stick. Bought a bunch of hockey tape. I put the stick right next to the real one that Hasek had given me. That was signed and it was mine. And all I did was replicate the tape job. So all of a sudden, now I have two sticks, both that look exactly the same, both with the stamp of Hasek. The one that I made wasn't signed, clearly, but it also looked too clean. Well, I'm in my basement, so what do? Take a puck, take one of my game used sticks, prop up the Hasek stick, and proceed to shoot the puck at the stick. So, yes, maybe you could call it the F word. I'm not going to use it because I'm not going to put myself in that position. Statute of limitations, though, this was 25 years ago, maybe, probably 25. But yeah, I created a second game-used Dominic Hasek stick, and then I sold it to them for $600. And they would send me a check in the mail. And I'd pack the stick up, and I'd send it right off to be a player. What they did with those sticks, I actually have no fucking clue. They didn't tell me. What I think they did with those sticks, they cut them up and put them onto a card. And then they told everybody they were a game-used stick. This didn't just end with one stick. No. I took Be a Player for a lot of money. I mean, a lot of money for me at that time in, 2000 or whatever. Yeah, I only did wood sticks. And this is still before everybody kind of switched to the one piece, aluminum, graphite, all that stuff. A lot of goalies, because the goalies were the easiest, because goalies typically have simple tape jobs. There are a lot of players that do. There are not a lot of players, but some players would do complicated tape jobs. Like they'd roll up the tape and make it like a string, wrap that around, and then do a regular tape job over it. But I got pretty good at this. It's not like art, I don't have to paint the Mona Lisa and then try and pass it off as, a 300 or 400, 500, however old that painting is, year-old painting with DNA tests and all that shit. This is just a hockey stick that is literally getting obliterated by a card company so that they can make more money. I still feel no guilt whatsoever because it wasn't like a person. It was a company. It wasn't like a collector. I wasn't doing this to a collector. I probably did it for Timu Solani stick. I'm just trying to think of like who I had sticks of. Ray Bork, Brodeur, Curtis Joseph. Yeah, a bunch of these goalies too. Probably did a Belfour also. But I don't even remember how it ended, how I stopped doing it. There was nothing bad happened or, nobody ever said anything to me. But it's just one of those things that I think about how if I was doing it as a young, a young adult, a teen technically, but, in the eyes of the law, I was probably 17, 18, 19. But you got to wonder how many people were doing shit like this. Like this is why I always tell people with that, the kind of like the idea of getting something signed or buying a piece of memorabilia. Like if you don't see it in person, why are you buying it? It's the same thing with autographs. Like I think I've sent away for one signing in my entire life, and that was the Todd McFarlane CGC signing. Everything else, it's got to be in person. It's got to be, because I knew people that did shady shit beyond what I did, and I was never doing business with them. I mean, I had found out one of the minor league hockey teams. I think it was the Barrie Colts. Yeah, it was the Barrie Colts, and they've always had a good junior hockey team in Barrie, Ontario, but they've always had one or two great players come through there like every 5 years. And I used to call these junior teams in Canada, these under 18 junior teams, and try and buy game used jerseys from them because A, you couldn't even get a replica of those jerseys, and B, it was like, why not? spend a couple $100, take a chance that this player is going to be something and get a really cool jersey. I found out that they were just forging jerseys. They were doing what I did to be a player, but they were doing it to people. Because like after a while I started to hear, and I can't remember what player it was, but I heard that like 4 different people had bought jerseys, game used jerseys from the Barry Colts of this player when they only used 2. So what were the Barry Colts doing? They were just making jerseys up. Maybe they were using for one game. Maybe they weren't even using them all. I had also heard stuff like that they were taking jerseys from players that left, re-lettering and numbering them to be the hot player, and then selling those as game use. Like, the sports memorabilia business has been fucking dirty far longer than I've been alive. Forgeries on autographs. Ali and Jordan is the most forged autograph of all time. It's a dirty business. It always has been. And I contributed to that. I'm not happy about it, but it was kind of funny that I was able to do that. And that Be a Player was trusting a kid in one aspect. But I did really enjoy collecting sports memorabilia. I made a lot of friends through it. A lot of players were friendly with me that were always cool to me. That whenever they saw me, they'd come over and sign and talk to me. And we used to go to get coffee with Keith Primo before the game whenever we play on Long Island, and like Theo Fleury. I still have a couple of sticks. They're not here. They're my friend is kind of being the steward of those in New York. But Theo Fleury played for the Flames, played for the Avalanche and the Rangers, won a gold medal with Canada, won a cup with Calgary. He gave me one of his sticks that he used in the 2000 Olympics, 2002 Olympics, and he signed it Theo Fleury gold medal. I had like such a crazy experience. This book up here, right above my head, The Day in the Life of the NHL, I'm in that book. My face isn't in it, but my back, like I'm getting somebody's autograph in that book. I wouldn't change that hobby that I had as a kid for the world. And it, ultimately brought me to a place where I could tell these stories and do a lot of different things. It brought me eventually to the job that I had in 2008 through pretty much the pandemic, with working in the events industry, doing live and silent auctions, mostly in sports. I got cool things like taking a picture with Derek Jeter on the court in Brooklyn at the Barclays Center. It's just tons of stories, tons of experiences that I wouldn't trade for the world. But I've been around a lot of scumbag people since then. But I don't really consider what I did a scumbag thing. It's more like a damn, Dave, like that was pretty clever. And once again, nobody actually got hurt. I exploited a company that's still exploiting people today. If you look at Upper Deck and what they were doing, and all the card garbage that they created that people spend tons and tons of money on. But anyway, there's so much more to these stories. I just thought this was a fun one to tell, with a little side story and that. And so many good things, like I said, have come out of this. So it's not the last you'll be hearing about this, and not the last pictures I'll be flashing of me with random hockey players or sports people. But it makes me think, and I don't know anybody's, look, to you, the listener, each individual one of you, I don't know what it's like to have lived your life. Just like you don't know what it's like to have lived mine. We don't know what it's like to live somebody else's life. And I often feel about myself that I've lived, and not in a spiritual way, like I've lived different lives all in this one Dave. And it started at that age when I started collecting autographs, and the different paths that it took me on and the different experiences it brought me. And I it's hard for me to step outside myself and be like, oh, you created this weird path. But I can sometimes just say that and feel like it's something special. And I hope that maybe this inspires you to write some stories down or think about experiences you've had, because I harp on this often to people in person and to the podcast. Our experiences and that human connection through them is really the only thing that we have, like that we can share with strangers and connect further. You've got your family, you've got your friends, but they're built in some way, shape, or form. Whereas I don't know you, my listener, you know me through what I tell you, but I feel like we share these experiences, or I'm sharing them with you, and I hope that you enjoy them. That's all. And I want to say thank you again for being part of this community that I didn't know that I would ever create. But there's, like I said, tons of stories, and maybe one day when I have enough YouTube, whatever it is, I pass the thing to go live, or maybe I should just go live. I can do a flip through of one of my photo albums and tell some of the stories about all these people I've met and the stupid circumstances that I put myself in, all that stuff. Like, I was an autograph hound, but I was always respectful, and I tried to have conversation or have a reason to want to get somebody's autograph, not just for profit, because I didn't originally do any of this to start making money. It's just like, you got to fund your hobby, and you can't just work at Subway all your life, because I thought that would actually happen at one point, but I smoked too much weed and I got fired. Thank you for listening to this episode. Before we get going, I just want to give a shout out to all the subscribers, the new ones. A lot of people have come in recently from some of the interviews and from the post office episode. Stick around, please. This podcast is just getting started. I'm starting to learn what grows a podcast and how to treat a podcast as it grows. So maybe not a Patreon, or maybe a Discord, or maybe a Substack, but something that we could stay connected and we can share stories. Please hit the like button if you're watching on YouTube. It really helps. It really helps if you rate the podcast on Spotify or Apple. You can write a review on Apple. You can leave a comment on Spotify. You can share this with a friend. You can share this on Reddit. Anything to help this podcast grow. Pick an episode, pick one of the guests, post it in a subreddit, something cool. It helps me, and gives me a little bit more of that juice to keep going. And that's really it. And we're closing in on 60 episodes. I'm going to be taking my season-ending break when we hit 60 episodes, and then come back full force. So thanks for listening to this podcast about nothing and everything, direct edition. I'm Dave, and I'll see you next time.